All right, we are going to do a reteach for lesson 1 and 2, which is just proportion word problems and fraction unit rates. There are lots of different ways that you can go about solving these problems. You can use just multiplication and division, but if you're in the reteach because you're struggling to be able to decide whether you need to multiply or divide, then my suggestion would be to use a proportion to set it up every single time because it's going to work no matter what. So let's look at this first problem. We've got the 11 Company sells 4 bottles of lemonade for $24.80. Find the unit price per bottle. So first off, I'm looking at that initial ratio. We've got 4 bottles for $24.80. So I'm just going to set up a proportion comparing the bottles to the money. So we've got our initial ratio, 4 bottles for $24.80. And then there's not a third number that's given to us, but it says the unit price. We're finding the price per bottle, means per 1 bottle. So the 1 goes with the bottles. We are solving for the price. When we solve a proportion, we find the diagonal that has 2 numbers in it. So that's this diagonal here in blue. And I multiply 2480 times 1, which is just 2480. And we divide by the number that's in the same diagonal as the variable, and that's 4. So we're going to divide this by 4. So you do 2480 divided by 4, and you get 6.2. But we're talking about money. That's our unit. We were solving for the money. We wouldn't write money as 6.2. So we're going to add a 0 because we should have 2 decimal places. So $6.20 per bottle. All right, let's do the problem number 2. Zach read 30 pages of his book in 12 minutes. If he continues at this rate, how long will it take him to read 45 pages? So we're going to set up our initial ratio, which we were comparing pages and minutes. So we have 30 pages in 12 minutes. If he continues at this rate, how long will it take him to read 45 pages? So those other numbers given to us is referring to the pages, which means how long. That means we're solving for the minutes. So we can go ahead and solve our proportion. The diagonal that has 2 numbers in it is this one. We're going to multiply 12 times 45, which gives us, calculate that, 12 times 45 is 540. And we're dividing by the number that's in the same diagonal as the variable, which is 30. 540 divided by 30 is 18. And what units were we solving for? X was on the bottom, which matches with minutes. So 18 minutes to read 45 pages. All right, number 3. Usain Bolt ran 12 meters in 30 seconds. What is the unit rate per second? So our initial ratio, 12 meters, 30 seconds. So meters and seconds. Initial ratio is 12 meters for 30 seconds. Question asks, what is the unit rate per second? So we are solving for the rate per second. So even though there's not a number there, the per tells us that it's per 1 second. So the 1 is going to go with the seconds, which means we are solving for the meters. And let's go ahead and solve this proportion. The diagonal this time that has 2 numbers in it is this one here. So 12 times 1 is just 12. And we divide by the number that's in the same diagonal as the variable, which is 30. And I'm just going to plug that into the calculator to get my decimal answer. 12 divided by 30 is 0.4. And the units we were solving for, X was on top. That means we were solving for the meters. So Usain Bolt can run 0.4 meters per second. So if you want to add that per second, you can do that as well. A total of 300 trees will be planted in a park. The ratio of pine trees to maple trees will be 2 to 3. So that 2 is standing for the pine, the 3 is standing for maple. How many pine trees will there be? What we have to remember is this 300 trees is not talking about pine, it's not talking about maple, it's talking about them combined. So when I look at this ratio, I need to add the 2 and 3 to get that a total, I'm going to have T stand for total, is equal to 5 in this ratio here that's given to us. We want to know how many pine trees. So I'm going to set up a ratio of pine to total. So we have the 2 stood for pine, so that's going to be in my initial ratio. And we calculated that 5 stands for the total. And then the number that's given to us is a total of 300 trees. So that's going to go on the bottom to match with the total. That means we are solving for how many pine trees? The number of pine trees on top there. Solving this proportion, I'm going to multiply the two numbers that are in the same diagonal. So we're going to multiply 2 times 300, which is 600. And then we're dividing by the number that's in the same diagonal as the variable. So we're going to divide by 5. And we get 120. We were solving for X is on top with pine trees. So 120 pine trees for our answer. Okay, let's look at lesson 2. Those were all lesson 1 examples. Lesson 2, we're doing fraction unit rates. So we're still setting up proportions, still looking at unit rates, but it's going to involve complex fractions. So Mary is making pillows for her life skill class. She bought 2.5 yards of fabric. Her total cost was $15. What was the cost per yard? So that's per 1 yard. So I'm comparing yards and I'm comparing money. So we have 2.5 yards for $15. We want to know what is the cost. We are solving for the cost for 1 yard. Now we're solving this like a proportion, even though there's complex fraction here. So we look at the diagonal, it has 2 numbers, and we multiply. 15 times 1 is 15. And then we are dividing by the number in the same diagonal as the variable. So we are dividing by 2.5. In order to solve this, we need to first make these improper. So 15 is going to become 15 over 1 divided by 2.5 is an improper fraction. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5 over 2. Now, when we divide, we keep it, switch it, flip it. So we're keeping our first number as 15 over 1, switching it from division to multiplication, flipping it from 5 over 2 to 2 over 5. Before I actually solve here, I'm going to check my diagonals. 15 and 5 divided by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3. Now I'm going to multiply across. 3 times 2 is 6. 1 times 1 is 1. So I can leave it as 6 over 1, or I can just write it as 6. Our X, what we were solving for, was with money. So we were solving for the unit cost is $6. Let's do another one because sometimes those complex fractions are tricky. Monica reads 7.5 pages of a mystery book in 9 minutes. What is the average reading rate in pages per minute? So per 1 minute. So we are comparing pages and minutes. Setting up our initial ratio was 7.5 pages in 9 minutes. We want to know what the reading rate per minute, so per 1 minute, solving for the pages. The diagonal that has numbers in it to be multiplied is this one. So 7.5 times 1 is just 7.5. And then we are dividing by the number in the same diagonal as the variable, which is 9. Before I do any dividing, I am writing them as improper fractions. 7.5. Well, 7 times 2 is 14, plus 1 is 15 over 2. Divided by 9 as a fraction is 9 over 1. Then we're remembering the rule is to keep it, switch it, flip it. So keeping our first number as 15 over 2, switching it from division to multiplication, flipping it from 9 over 1 to 1 over 9. And then checking to see if anything simplifies before I multiply across. 15 and 9 both divide by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Now I'm going to multiply across. 5 times 1 is 5. 2 times 3 is 6. We were solving for x is on top. We were solving for pages. So 5/6 pages per minute. And that's it.